First of all, thanks so much for talking to me. I've been a big fan of yours for a lot of years, so it's kind of trippy right now to talk to you.
Well, thank you very much, John. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, dude, I just want to ask you how it feels playing these death songs a lot. I know you've been doing the Death to All stuff for a little while now, but it still must be kind of crazy being on stage playing these songs from decades ago.
Well, indeed, and what kind of makes it even crazier at the moment is the fact that we have so many brand new songs to our repertoire that we're adding in for these shows that we're doing with this Scream of Perseverance tour. Because we've Death to All has always played material from every single Death record.
Hmm.
But now that we are focusing on some of on to direct albums, directly, it's
Right.
fix this thing, got a little stand going
Yeah,
here.
no worries, dude.
Yeah, man. And so that's that. So yeah, we've got a number of songs that we have never played before. So um, there's always been kind of the quote unquote standards from each record that we play. The super popular ones, just the ones that we know are going to get the most rise out of the crowd, kind of thing. And now that
Totally.
we're delving into some real deep cuts, it takes a lot of brain power to get those in there. Yeah, totally. So that is pretty good. And for myself, I've been on the road since February um, with four different projects actually. So I
You're
started working on
crazy.
all of this material in November. So just like about 10 or 12 days ago, I was on the road with Death Clock, and
Right.
we finished up that run, and then got home and came up to Los Angeles the next day to track a song for a TV show that's going to be coming out next year, just
Nice.
a single track. And then um, we did the Bear McCreary show, and that took some rehearsals. So that was like with Death Clock, we had 20 songs. With Bear McCreary, we had 20 songs. And with Death to All, we have like 32 songs or 34 songs, something like that. And so over the course of these like 12 days here, 10 days or whatever it's been, I will have played 70 plus songs with three different projects. So
That's crazy.
yeah, the schedule is crazy. And that's why I always tell myself when the schedule does get crazy, it's like, dude, you asked for this. You're like, when you were a kid and you wanted to do this, you are doing this, so don't complain. And I never complain, but I'm always like,
Nice.
you asked for this and you got what you asked for,
You're
so
fighting
hey.
yourself.
Yeah, totally. And I don't fight it. I just relax and just say, hey man, I'm in a very blessed and amazing position. So I'm very fortunate. So, I've said it many times. I'm definitely the poster child for living one's dream, because I was 11 years old when I announced that this is going to be my path. And
Wow.
by the time I was 13, I was like, I am cemented in this, and this is exactly what I want to do. And I've gotten to do exactly what I want to do: play music for a living, play drums for a living, and play kick-ass music. That was the other thing. I just didn't want to play some, in some silly bands or whatever. I wanted to make heavy music that I love hearing. So I'm it's a win-win-win-win all over the place for me, John. Totally.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing, dude. I could tell that you've been super passionate about it since you've been a kid because you have such crazy chops. I can tell you put in so many hours. That actually makes me think, did you have any natural ability playing the drums, or were you just so persistent that you became as good as you are today?
Well, I think it might be a little from column A and a little from column B there. I do think I had sort of a natural aptitude for it. But one thing that I did do, I taught myself how to play drums. And I've said this many times, I taught myself how to play drums by air drumming. And
Wow.
I was serious about it when I was 8 is when I started air drumming. And I was air drumming to all my favorite records, the Kiss and Aerosmith and Queen and Cheap Trick and Van Halen when they were starting to come out, and Ted Nugent, and all that stuff. And then it started evolving into, I started getting into some of the more proggier elements of rock, like
Hmm.
Rush, definitely, King Crimson, UK. Gino Vanelli. His drummer Mark Craney was a kick-ass prog jazz fusion drummer. That started leading to a lot of the jazz fusion. But when I was a kid, boy, Tommy Aldridge was a hero of mine, and Mark Craney, and all Neil Peart, of course, Kerry
Right.
Bozio. And so what I would do is I would just air drum to their I'd put their albums, the LPs on and that's the whole reason why I play open handed. It was just where my record player was located. I'm in a hotel room right now. I'm sitting on a bed and
Hmm.
in the exact same kind of position as I would sit here, change the album over there, the record player over there, and I would pound on the bed over there. And then I started evolving into having this air drum kit that was, let me tell you, my air drum kit was huge, man. Gargantuan. That thing made Neil Peart look like a little Tonka toy drum kit. But
Wow.
um, so yeah, but I would essentially give myself lessons, because I'd listen to, like, say, what Neil Peart is playing, what his hands are doing. It's like, okay, I can figure that. When he's doing a fill, I could tell what those, I could hear what he was doing, what his
Hmm.
feet were doing, and whatever accents he was putting here and there. I was like, I'm picking all this up, and at the end of a song like La Via Strangiato, or one of the brutal, challenging Rush songs, at the end of that song, you've just given yourself a lesson. You figured out what
Wow.
he's doing, and so that is how I learned how to play drums. And so by the very first time I ever got on a kit, um, I kind of had a natural aptitude for it, and I jammed with my cousin Ken. I was 12, he was 18, and he had a band, and we went to his jam station one time, just jammed together, and he was like, wait a minute, this is the first time you've ever sat on a drum kit ever? Like, dude, you're crushing. I just thought this was going to be a joke. We're playing, Grand Funk Railroad songs, and, Marshall Tucker songs and things like that. And I could play them. So,
Wow.
so he's like, dude, you got something, definitely. And so that was my passion. I knew this is what I wanted to do. Totally.
So I've played a lot of air drums in my life. Are you saying that I have a chance of being a real drummer?
Absolutely. I tell people this all the time, that like, there are times when I'll be talking with a dude after the show, and he's a little up there in age, and he's like, I always wanted to play drums, but I got married young, I got 3 kids, putting them through college, never had, and now my kids are all kind of college age, and I'm like, it's never too late to learn. And it's like, if you don't even need drumsticks, but if you were to just, I'll tell everybody this, like, find a song you like, find the band you like, a series of songs that you like, and just sit there and just figure out what the drummer is doing. Start with something simple. Start with some ACDC, or something that is, you can grasp. You
Hmm.
don't have to go to AAA advanced level right off the bat. But I mean, if you sit there and play it along to the Thunderstruck by ACDC. I'm just picking a tune out of my head, or
Yeah.
Girls Got Rhythm, just something really simple. Phil Rudd was just a great meat and potatoes solid drummer. He hit really hard. Play along to some ACDC, something simple, and then start advancing. When you're like, I can actually do that. Get a foot going at the same thing and all that. And I tell guys that all the time. You don't need a drum kit to start learning how to play drums, because they're always like, I never even learned how to play drums. It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
you got a
drum
pair of
kits are
hands, man.
expensive. Yeah.
Right here, you got 2 drumsticks right here. Seriously, man. Like, all the time, man. Us drummers, we do this all the time. Hey, man, remember that
I do
part when
that
you were
too.
playing this? Exactly. You got a pair of sticks attached to your body, so
That's
use those
awesome.
drumsticks.
Now that we're talking about this, I just got this memory. I have this uncle who lived his whole life pretty much in Honduras. This third world country. He couldn't afford a drum set, but he always wanted to play. So he started by banging on pots and pans until
Absolutely.
he could afford a drum set. So I guess that
Absolutely.
does work.
That is, there are so many drummers, historied drummers, that lots of stories to their development that involved moms, pots, and pans. Absolutely.
I
Totally.
love it. Now, I was gonna also ask you, I feel like most bands are like, okay, we got these 10 songs worked out, 15 songs. Let's just tour with these songs, maybe add one or two while we're on the road. What made you guys decide, hey, let's do a completely different set list in all these different cities? Let's play one album in this city and then another album in that city, and then a mix of everything in this third city. That's crazy.
Well, that and what makes it even sort of crazier is that we are actually doing those two album sets in the same city. So we've booked two nights at the same venue where the first night that's gonna be right. The first night is going to be your Scream Bloody Gore and the brutal albums, Leprosy and Spiritual Healing. And then the second night is going to be Sound of Perseverance with selected killer tracks from Human, Individual Thought Patterns, Symbolic. And so, that's one thing that Death to All has always done is we play the Chuck's entire catalog, and we don't just, because there's Steve who played on Human, and Steve and Gene played on Individual Thought Patterns, and Gene and Bobby played on Symbolic. So we could be like, well, we're just going to play on those albums that we played on,
Mhm.
and that's stupid. We would never do that. It's like we're killer players that love playing the entirety of everything that will play just on regular tours, that aren't specializing in albums. We're playing songs from every album. So that's just the way to properly do this. The only way to do this. Anything else is like, you're not doing this for the fans. You're doing it for you and your pocketbook, maybe. But we're doing this for the fans. We're doing this for the fans of Chuck, the fans of Death, the fans of just metal and great memories. And you definitely, I mean, each night is going to be so killer that you do not want to be getting that phone call the next day going, man, where were you? You missed, this was such a great night, because it's bringing everybody out of the woodworks. And we're going to have some special guests along the way,
Ooh.
that are going to be pretty fun, from certain towns, from town to town. And, at least guys coming out to join us on stage for a moment, playing some pots and pans, maybe, you never know. But yeah, so that's where, it's going to be a really exciting pair of nights in many instances. And either way, it's going to be a great night of metal played well. And it, if you view this from like the fan standpoint as a trip down memory lane, it's going to be a killer trip down memory lane. There's so many guys that like grizzled metal dudes wearing the battle jackets and the beards, and they've been around for a long time, where they got tears running down their face because they're like,
Yes.
we never thought we would ever see this again. And this is making,
Yes.
death is such an important part to a lot of when folks were younger, and even the younger generation now, they're very important. But you're the younger generation is getting new memories created for them. The older generation is getting to relive some old memories of the first time they saw death, the first time they heard death, the impact that death has had on their lives. And so it's just a win-win all over the place, these shows. So the tickets are selling fast. So I would strongly suggest you pick up your tickets, because you're going to have a great night of metal regardless, like
Absolutely.
totally. So there you go.
Dude, as a fan, I love everything you just said. I totally agree with everything you just said. In fact, you guys are only playing one show here in Salt Lake, so I'm actually flying out to Denver to see you guys play The Sound of Perseverance because I love that record so much. So I
Excellent.
seriously love everything you guys are doing.
Well, I know for a fact that we're going to have a very, very special guest the night before on the Scream Bloody Gore night. And, I'll reach out to this person and say, hey, man, can we announce that you're coming down to the show? He'll probably be like, of course, yeah, sure.
Right.
But at this moment, I haven't established that with. And but it is somebody who is very, very extremely important to the history of not only death, but death metal in general. Like,
Mm,
and I'm talking about the birth of death metal.
wow.
This is somebody who is very extremely important. And yeah, so that's pretty cool. And so hopefully at some point, we'll be able to say, hey man, this guy's coming down, and for those who are interested, would be like, holy moly, that's that is a founding element of my favorite style of music. This is one of the founding elements of it. Um, so there you go. I'm laying little hints down, and
Okay.
right here, little breadcrumbs. But he was definitely involved in the inception of definitely death metal. The first two death metal albums, absolutely. So there you go.
I love it. By the way, talking about crying, it's funny that you say that because I literally told my fiance, I'm like, you're gonna see me cry to some crazy, brutal death metal music. Because I was born in 1996, so I never got to see
Oh
death, and I
man,
never thought
yeah.
I would ever see any of those songs live, but I worship those albums, so it's going to be just a crazy experience, which brings me to my other question. How the hell did you find your front man who sounds so identical to Chuck and can play his crazy guitar
Right.
parts while screaming? Like how did that even happen?
That is a very fortuitous set of circumstances that occurred. Was that he was playing with Cynic at the time with Paul and Sean, and Paul and Sean had already done. Paul and Sean were involved. Paul Masvidal, Sean Reiner, were involved in the very first tour of Death to All. Myself, Steve DiGiorgio, Paul, Sean, Shannon Hand, Scott Clendenin. Um, I know I'm. I know we had like seven guys, so I think that might make up the set. Bobby Coble. Um, Trying to think of anybody else we're forgetting. Anyway, so I think I got everybody.
All right.
All those guys were involved in the first run of Death, and so when they were starting to bring Cynic back, Max Phelps was involved in the Cynic lineup, and I think, yeah, Max was their heavy vocalist and second guitarist and things like that. And I think perhaps maybe it was like they were starting to notice a similarity, like, hey, man, you sound like this guy we used to work with. And
Hmm.
so Max was brought in at a time when that Death to All was Sean, Steve, Paul, and Max. So it was three members of Cynic and then Steve DiGiorgio. And then when Paul and Sean were no longer involved, and Bobby Coble and myself, you know, returned to our rightful thrones, we we retained Max, and Max is great. Max is amazing, man. He's a great person to begin with, and that's the best part
That's
of it.
always a
Like
plus since you have to
we
basically live together.
and God, he and Stevie D just have us cracking up all the time because Max has such a killer sense of humor, and we're always throwing just four guys throwing around just jibes and just fun concepts, fun things around for each other. We definitely entertain each other, and that's part of the super fun of Death to All for the guys in Death to All. And we know that the crowd notices how much fun we're having on stage. Like, Steve and Bobby having a great time with each other, always doing goofy things around each other. And, Steve just fucks with Max nonstop during the show. And you'll see it, man. You'll see, like, if watch any YouTube, you'll see Steve right in Max's face, just trying to get him to blow lyrics, and Max is like right here, looking out to the crowd. Stevie D's like right here, like just yelling at him and stuff. It just, we have a good time, and that definitely translates to the audience. So it is a great time all around, totally. So it the music is brutal enough,
Right.
like we're not up there in you know uh pyramid studs and gauntlets or anything. We're just us, and we definitely let the music do the talking for us, but we have a really good time in presenting Death's music to you. Absolutely.
I gotta say, as a fan, whenever I see a band and you can just tell that they all get along with each other and they're all having fun, it makes it more fun for me to
I know,
see
right?
them having fun. So I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's I'm every fan. I'm a fan. I love when my favorite band is up there cutting up with each other and just laughing and having a good time. And they're not just putting in the time. They're not
Phoning it
just
in.
punching
Right.
the card,
Hmm.
the time clock. What they're really enjoying themselves. That completely just that energy just gets sent out to the fans. It gets brought back to the band, and just it's just this great recycling of kick-ass energy. That always makes a great night, and that's one of the reasons why I love Death to All so much, because that is exactly what happens, man. It is just a just that revolving rotisserie of kick-ass energy back and forth, and the music is the chicken totally.
Absolutely. I love it. The other day I was watching drum cam footage of you playing The Philosopher. It's a video you upload on your YouTube a little while ago.
Right.
And while watching it, I'm like, man, I don't even know how I'm gonna talk to Gene because just watching you do the outro to The Philosopher, I just wanted to ask you, like, how do you do that? Like, how do you do that? How do you remember each little thing to hit? Like, it just blows my mind. I don't understand it.
Well, I will be quite honest when it comes to the other guys' material, like Sean Reiner, Richard
Hmm.
Christie. I'm really trying to emulate what they did, because it's some challenging stuff, and you want to play the material that everybody's used to.
Right.
Um, and back in the day, for the early stuff, the earlier stuff, because we started touring with Death before individual Stevie D and I were starting to hit the road with Death before individual came out. It was recorded. The release date was coming, but we had been offered some shows beforehand. Um, a couple of months before the album came out, some festival dates over in Europe. And so I had gone to Chuck and I said, well, hey, what do you want me to do about, I'm gonna follow Sean, because that's some kick-ass drumming, and the world needs to hear it as much. If you're gonna cover a Rush song, you better play it as close to Neil Peart as possible.
Right.
Same deal with Sean and Human. You better don't come up with your own stuff, Gene. However, with like the spiritual healing, leprosy, and scream bloody gore material, I had asked Chuck, do you want me, I'm a good mimic. I could do whatever you want. And he was like, oh, dude, go sick, go nuts. Like the drums are, make those yours, and you
Hmm.
do your thing with Sean as well. Like just, you're you. And so just do whatever you want to do. So I was like, it's okay if I, zhuzh up the earlier material. He's like, yeah, man, totally. So, he always used to tell me, go sick, go nuts. And so
Nice.
that's pretty cool. So we, I would zhuzh up the Scream Bloody Gore stuff, not too much, but then a lot of the leprosy and um, spiritual healing. Billy Andrews laid down such a great template of drums on those albums that it was just fun just to take them up just a little bit of a notch, just get a little more outside of the box sort of thing, because the drums on Leprosy were great. The drums on Spiritual Healing were real solid, real killer, So it was always a pleasure to play those two albums, as well as Chris Reifert was a um, you know, young stoner. He was like
Nice.
17 when he tracked that record, so you could hear the kind of meter things going on. And so on this run, I knew I was thinking that I'm gonna temper down some of the more jazzier portion. I am gonna try to lay as close to their stuff as I can. I've got 30 years of playing this stuff of where these other versions are in my head. So now it's a challenge to go back and relearn what's actually going on those albums. And so to answer your question about the Philosopher, this is where it's more challenging for me to like try to recall every night what Chris was doing here and what Billy's doing there, and especially what Sean and Richard are doing. And
Hmm.
with myself, I give myself just the kind of break, I don't treat my era all that precious, where it's like it's got to be
Okay.
just like the record. Um, and that's for my sanity, you know. And I
Right.
I I I play as close to the album as I can, but if I've changed the like the little fills in the frog part of the philosopher, we call the part where Stevie D's bass is going wow 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 wow.
Yeah.
We've always called that the frog, and I try to come up with some cool, tasty stuff, but I'm not trying to emulate what I did back then. I like what I'm doing now, even cooler. But people might be, "Hey, man, he didn't play it just like the record. He's doing all the other stuff like that." But it's like I'm saving my own sanity with the with like don't crush yourself relearning your own stuff too. So I feel
Gotcha.
I get to take the artistic license with it. It's
Yeah, it's
it's
your
it,
stuff.
it's pretty dang close. Let me tell you. If I had to, I could. I just don't choose to. That's with the gene material of death. So there you go.
Gotcha. Okay. I do want to get a little off topic for just a second. Since I have you
Sure.
here and since I've been a fan of yours for so long, I just want to tell you that Dark Roots of Earth, dude, it's one of my favorite albums of all time. And that's really what introduced me to Testament. And your drums on that record are just so insane and just so perfect. I just wanted to ask you about making that record.
Well, thank you. That's very cool. Well, I was in the midst of playing with this other band, and I think it was either Eric. I'm pretty sure it was Chuck Billy who reached out while I was kind of coming towards the end of the touring cycle or the tour that I was on with this other band. And he'd reached out because we had worked on the Demonic album a number of years earlier,
Hmm.
and he had explained, and this was at a time when Paul Bostaff was Testament's drummer, and Paul had he had cultivated an injury to his hand, and Paul was later telling me about this injury, showing me what was happening with that injury. I was like, wow. And Paul was like, I was afraid I was never going to be able to play drums again. And
Dang.
this was back in 2011 kind of thing. So Chuck had reached out and said, hey, in about a week or so, we have to start working on our record. We've been hoping that Paul was going to be playing capable um, by whatever time it was in June or whatever of 2011, and he's not going to be quite there yet. So could you help us out by coming up and playing this record? So what we did, I think we rehearsed it for 3 weeks, and then we started tracking, and we were tracking all the time. I was learning, I learned all the songs in the first few days, and then we tracked a quick little pre-production demo. And the way that Testament works is they'll do like 3 weeks in the studio where the first 10 days they get down the songs, and then record those songs like you're recording for the album, and then they turn around and re-record everything you guys just did. We've done that for the last 2 or 3 records, and
Mm.
that's a good way to work it, because a lot of times the songs come trickling in, and in that case it's like they were on the clock, so I had them send me what songs they had, and songs change over the course of these pre-production demos. So I was like, well, just get me in there as soon as you can, we'll start working on this. And so over the course of about 3 weeks, we tracked the songs once and then turned around and tracked them again, and the second tracks are the ones that ended up making the record. They got a little more lived in, you got to play them for an extra 10 days or so kind of thing.
Okay.
So and that's how that album came about. Totally. It was a
Wow.
kick-ass. And I remember one of the cool things was I used John Allen from Sadus and Testament's kit, and he was telling me that he got this kit from John Tempesta, and this drum kit was one of Cozy Powell's chrome kits. And Cozy Powell was a legendary drummer to me. Played with Rainbow and a little time at Black Sabbath. He also did some Whitesnake or whatever. But his era with Rainbow was a real influence on my early drumming, and he was one of the one of the godfathers of double bass, and a lot of his drum beats were the ones that all double bass drum beats were based on for years and years. So that was a pretty cool little, like, wow, I'm playing on Cozy Powell's kit. Yeah. So that was pretty fun.
By the way, talking about borrowing someone else's kit and talking about Paul Bostaff just kind of reminded me of the story. I don't even totally recall the story. It just hit me right now. Weren't you very involved with Slayer's really early stuff? Didn't Dave use your drum set or something crazy like that?
Well, I guess in that regard, there, because I that Slayer was an early band that I was hanging out with definitely, and I was there for all their early eras. And um, One thing that had happened was when they were in the studio for Haunting the Chapel, I I had loaned him a China, that China that you
Okay.
hear in Chemical Warfare, ka ka, and that's what Dave used
Ah.
to. I used to loan him my China, and he used to call it the ka. Hey, can I borrow your ka for the show this week? And and I also held his drum kit in place for the same song for Chemical Warfare because there was no drum carpet at Track Record Studios. Had to set his kit on a concrete floor, and so he's trying to play, and he was trying. I think he got through. Yeah, he was just starting to play whatever tune that was, and yeah, I think he had started with maybe Captor Sin. Maybe might have been the first. I'm standing behind him air drumming as he's recording Captor Sin. And how patient was he? I'd be like, hey, can you just leave,
uh,
kid? Yeah, I'm not air drumming.
right.
I know the song. I'm air drumming all his licks and all that stuff. And then when it came time for Chemical Warfare, and he's trying to do the drums on that, he called out from the drum room saying, "Hey, my drums are walking. Can somebody come out and just hold my drums together? Because my kick drum's walking." And sure enough, there was like 8 heads turned and looked at me because I'm the drummer. They're like, "You're the drummer. Get out there and do it." So crawling on my hands and knees, and I got my arms around cymbal stands and mic stands and tom stands, and I'm holding his tom in place, his kick drum in place by the tom stand that's attached to it. And I just remember that tom that does a. I remember Dave he had concert toms, meaning there's no bottom heads, and his drum heads, the part that you'd hit, were
Mhm.
they were Evans hydraulic heads, and so they were clear. They were purple colored. The Evans hydraulics, they put out blue, purple, red. Just take your choice. He happened to have purple heads on, so I could see that stick hitting right there. Like as I'm holding the thing, and that tom was right above my head, and I just remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, I sure hope Dave has this tune together and
Oh,
tracks this once or twice, and then it's good." Because if we're here for 3-4 hours while he's working it out, this is gonna be horrible.
yeah, not
Um,
go well.
he nailed it in one track, in one
Nice.
take. It was great, but that's always my memory. Every time I hear Chemical Warfare, I remember looking at the drums, at the stick, just yeah. So that's I have a memory of Chemical Warfare, unlike anybody else, I guess. So
Right. Ah,
that's
see, I
pretty
knew there
fun.
was something crazy, some crazy story about those early Slayer songs, and it
Well,
was
and
you right under the drums. That's awesome.
before that, like when they were recording Show No Mercy, there's the song Evil Has No Boundaries, and this is a pretty well-known story as well. But they had the song Evil Has No Boundaries, and live up until that point, it was always Jeff and Carrie live on the mic, and it was like, Evil, my words too far, Evil, no, this guy, Tom's really low, and their voices they're not background singers, so it just wasn't the heaviest, it was like Evil. It just wasn't all super heavy, but it was about time for Jeff and Carrie to go do their vocals for it. I remember Tom and Carrie were sitting on the couch right there, and I was like, "Hey guys, you ever thought about, like, getting a big old gang of dudes in there and just have them going, oh, like big chant chorus, gang chorus?" And they looked at each other like, "Great idea." no time like the present. Everybody get in the vocal booth. And so, we went in
Yeah.
there and then tracked that one. And um, I remember as we were leaving the vocal booth, it took one take, it took 5 minutes to do. Um, as we were leaving the vocal booth, I just said, I sang Devo. And Hanneman's next to me. He's like, I sang Weebles. And Weebles were a toy. They were shaped like eggs. Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. I'm sure you could YouTube or Google an old commercial for it, but they were a kid's toy. They were just the shape of eggs, but there were little faces painted on them, and they were huge in the 70s. So if you're our age, you remember what Weebles are. So I'm like, I sang Devo. Hannah was like, I sang Weebles. And so we were cracking up about it. And I swear to God, if you put some earphones in, ear bros, whatever, headphones, um, if you listen real closely, you can hear a guy going Devo and another guy going Weebles. So
Wow. I actually
that's
never knew
pretty
that. I'll
fun.
have to listen closely to that. All right, Gene. Well, I'm gonna wrap up and give you some time here, but on behalf of all the fans, thank you so much for doing this Death to Wall stuff. I cannot wait. Obviously, like I said, can't wait to see you in Denver. Can't wait to see you here in Salt Lake. It'll be my dad's birthday, and he
Oh,
introduced
good.
me to Death. So that'll be
Very
also a
cool.
very cool emotional experience. But yeah, thanks for taking your time to talk to me, and can't
Absolutely.
wait
Oh,
to
well,
see you, man.
I hope your dad gets to make it out to the show with you, man. I hope that's a thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Killer.